Well, as I mentioned at the start, we have a great guest joining us today. Catherine Engelbrecht is the founder of TrueTheVote. I believe we have her on the phone, and she had a great victory recently. Her organization had a great victory, and I want to just have her tell you about TrueTheVote, about what the litigation involved, why she sued the federal government, and what the result was, and what TrueTheVote is up to now. This is a national hero who really stood up to the abuse by the IRS of citizens in this country under the Obama administration. So, do we have Catherine? We don't have Catherine. Okay. I don't have her. Well, while we're working with that, TrueTheVote was founded by Catherine Engelbrecht. She actually ended up creating this organization because she volunteered one time as just to be an election clerk, to be watching the polls during an election, and realized how slipshod the conduct was of elections in her particular jurisdiction. She's in South Texas, I believe. We have her now? No, we don't. So what happened was she noticed things that were not appropriate happening in the election where she served as an election clerk. She spoke up about it, and she finally founded a group called TrueTheVote. And the whole point of TrueTheVote was to try to get Americans' elections lined up again with a law, try to have them lined up with the requirement that only people with a legal right to be here got to vote. And now I think we have Catherine. Hello? No. Okay. I don't know what's happening. I know she was traveling. I actually was talking to her yesterday or a couple of days ago. I know she's traveling, and we were going to catch her on her cell phone. So I'm going to go ahead and tell her story in case we're not able to grab her. But she founded TrueTheVote. She became a national hero, basically advocating for the idea that in this country, we have to follow our laws. If we don't follow our laws related to elections, and we permit people who won't follow election laws to run elections, we literally have no election integrity. We have no ability in this country to be sure that we have the promise of one person, one vote that is a core requirement of democracy. So she founded TrueTheVote. She began working very hard. We think we have her. Hi, Catherine.
Hey there. Hey, Debbie. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm great. And I was you, but this is a zillion% better, and I'm thrilled to be with you. Thanks so much for inviting me.
I'm so glad you could join us. I will tell you, I've already introduced TrueTheVote, and because I wanted, and I think I did a pretty good job, but I want.
You did.
Thank you. I want to turn and ask you, so you actually, Catherine, you sued the IRS recently, and I want to back up from that and just have you explain to our listeners to start with the ways in which you and your organization, TrueTheVote, were hassled in the Obama era by federal government agencies as you tried to move forward demanding essentially honest elections. What happened?
Well, it's been a whirlwind. In 2009, I started TrueTheVote, just as you said, with the expectation that this would be a great unifying effort to encourage citizens to work in the polls, irrespective of party politics. Let's just do the right thing civically. I had no idea that what I was setting myself up for was just a political buzzsaw, and I walked right into it. So when we filed our application for 501c3 nonprofit status with the IRS, that set in motion a series of events that lasted for the next 18 months and included 23 different audits or investigations and inquiries from the IRS, from the Department of Justice, from the FBI, from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, from OSHA, from the Texas version of the EPA. Absolutely outrageous. And for 2 years, I didn't tell a soul that all of that was going on. Didn't know that there were other conservative organizations that were being targeted. There was such a stigma associated with this. I mean, it was like I could hear the blades of the black helicopter over my shoulder. It just this couldn't be happening. But after a point, in fact, it was the point was that the second time that Battis came out to my then place of business and required that we open up our safe and show all of our guns, and it was so outrageous that I called our attorney and I said, enough is enough. Now, mind you, all of this was happening while we were still being held in limbo with our 501c3 status, which is, to give that some context, normally when you file for your nonprofit status, it takes, you submit an application, and then it takes, a couple, 2-3 months to hear back from the IRS. Maybe they have questions, you answer those questions, and then they say thumbs up, thumbs down, yes, you meet the standard, no, you don't. And if you do, as a 501c3, then for your donors, they have the benefit of being able to take those contributions as tax donations. So it's very significant, particularly if you're trying to apply for grants and scholarships with foundations and the like, and we were. But we couldn't because we didn't have this status. And as the months wore on and the months turned into years, major donors and foundations began to kind of look at us like, what is wrong with you guys? Why can't you get this status approved? But we were receiving questions from the IRS like, we want to know every Facebook posting you've ever posted and every tweet you've ever tweeted. And we want to know everywhere you've ever spoken and to whom and what you said and what you're going to speak in the next year. It was bizarre. I couldn't believe what was happening. And so, again, all of that happened, but the second time that Battis came out, I called the attorney and said, who can we sue and how fast can we sue them? And the thought was to go straight in at the IRS, which we did. We sued them in D.C., in the federal court, D.C. Circuit, and we sued them in 2013. We have been in court since that time up until about 2 weeks ago, actually, let me caveat, we are still in court. However, we are now in sort of the closing up of the arguments because 3 weeks ago now, the judge in our case, Judge Walton, came out and said not only did we win, but we are deserving of recouping our attorney's fees, and what's more, he penalized the IRS with the requirement to pay enhanced fees because of their conduct during the trial. So we were fully vindicated, won on all points, and all we were after from the beginning, it started trying to get our 501c3, but the bigger principle behind that was to ensure that there was case law that could be used in case this ever happens to any other individual or organization in this country. And I hope it never does. But if it does, TrueTheVote's case will stand as a clear indication that it is wrong, that what happened to us happened, and the government was ultimately held, to be at fault. And that's my story.
It is quite a story. Kathy, we talked on the show many times about how the IRS, particularly during the Obama era, would not permit organizations who sought 501c3 status, if they were conservative organizations, Tea Party style, anyone conservative, they were simply given the runaround by the IRS and given false reasons and delays and ridiculous inquiries. But I would say TrueTheVote kind of won the contest, if there were to be one, for how much you were assaulted and attacked. I want to ask you, in the course of the trial, I was going to mention, I'm glad that you did, that the judge found the IRS's conduct so egregious. He awarded you a bad faith enhancement on the not just attorney's fee, but enhancement on that fee for the IRS's bad faith. And I do want to get to, there's so many things I want to ask you, but what kinds of things during the trial did the IRS do? Did you know what caused the judge to get to that conclusion that they truly showed bad faith?
Well, first, I'll say this first. I'd never seen the inside of a courtroom prior to this case and all that unfolded. So much of this is still sort of new territory for me. But from all that has been explained to me and that I've witnessed, in fact, let me set it up for you. We would go into court, and it would be me and my attorney and maybe my attorney's assistant. And then the IRS would bring 23 attorneys, I counted one time.
Oh, my gosh.
It was packed. And you just, of course, as a taxpayer, you're just going, this is insane. What in the world is happening? But But I think what the judge saw, and I certainly don't want to, surmise his view of, incorrectly. But what I would say, certainly what we experienced, our legal team experienced, is every possible delay, every possible argument that went down some rabbit hole that was ultimately took months and months to resolve, only to no end. Even now, the extension upon extension, waiting until the last 30 minutes of the last day from the last extension to file anything, telling us they don't have documents, then flooding us with tens of thousands of documents. It's just, there's no doubt in my mind that all of that charade went on just to keep us busy and away from doing what we were organized to do, which was to encourage citizens to take a stand for free and fair elections. And it has continued even under the Trump administration because of the depth of the swamp, and it's the swamp attorneys that had a stranglehold on this case.
That's a great expression, of swamp attorneys, because many people would assume, well, finally, we have the Obama administration is out of office, we have a new president, we have new people at the higher levels. But this is a great example when people say the swamp, it is the below the highest level, because President Trump, as all presidents do, appoints the head of various agencies. But the layer of lawyers, advisors, supervisors beneath that highest level, who may be longtime holdovers, not just in the Obama era, even before that, and just people who have very different views of government and law and rights than the president does, are still running the show. And Trump's appointees cannot rid the system of these people fast enough. And so you're exactly right. It's the swamp. Your case is proof of the swamp ongoing. I do want to ask you now, though. See, TrueTheVote was just people respect that organization so much, and you're finally, at least you have this behind you. Actually, I do want to ask. I don't know if you're allowed to say on air, but do you know what judgment, how much money you are going to be awarded from the IRS?
We don't know. That's going to be left to the judge. But our fees at this point are in excess of $2 million, and so the hope is that he would find in favor of paying, or having the IRS pay cover all those attorneys' fees. And you know what? I got to tell you, Debbie, it's bittersweet, because on the one hand, it's just taxpayer money, and I hate that thought. But we had to stick in this case long enough to establish law to prevent it from happening again. We could have taken a settlement and just, shut it down and moved on, but that wasn't the point. And it was such a long slug to get here. So it was expensive, but well worth it. And I think ultimately money well invested, even though, we're all paying for it, I guess.
Catherine, I commend you for keeping up the fight and going after them and not settling for something, because I'm sure at some point your life has been disrupted, you've had your businesses disrupted, you've had all the ABC agencies showing up at your home, at your business. This is an example of engaging in tyranny, just hassling citizens to where it's just easier to surrender. So I commend your courage and strength. But now that that's behind you, what is TrueTheVote doing now? What is your focus now going forward?
Well, thank you for asking, because we have been very quiet for a very, very long time. And I have to say, just in all candor, during that period, I really did some soul searching on what had happened to that point, and what the purpose of TrueTheVote moving forward really could be, given the history. And where I arrived at was through a lot of deep thought and a lot of prayer. The first initiative that we're going to announce, and have begun to do so, just not in a big way. The big way's still coming, but we have joined forces with an organization called Our Values, that's run by one of the Benghazi heroes, a good friend of mine. His name is Mark Geist. And,
I love him.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And so Mark and I, through many conversations, began to recognize that we had overlapping interests. His interest was making sure that veterans understood the power of their vote, so that they would have their interests represented more completely in Congress. And so his interest was getting the word out about the importance of voting. And that turned into a conversation about the shortage of volunteers that we have working inside of elections. And of course, that's always been one of the pillars of TrueTheVote's platform is we have to stay engaged. Elections are ours to run. If we do not run them, you're going to see a slide towards what we already are seeing in many states, right? It's all mail-in. The standards of accuracy and security are abysmally low. And once you go down that path, it is incredibly difficult to restage it in a way where citizens are actually looking at one another in the eyes when they're voting on election day and sort of all in it, you know, for the cause. And so the thought was veterans with such hearts for service and such awareness and dedication to the rule of law, what better volunteer group could there be, right, than veterans who might want to be involved in the volunteer effort. And so together where we are headed now is to put a very very hopefully wide messaging campaign out to the veteran community, informing them not only of the importance of their vote, but how to get involved in the election process. And TrueTheVote's role in that will be in providing the training and support necessary to help, if they've never served before in this capacity, help them find their place. And we just couldn't be more excited. I think it's going to have a huge impact.
Yeah, that is brilliant. I love that. I love tying the veterans and the mission for fair and accurate voting. Catherine Engelbrecht, thank you so much for joining us, folks. If you want to read more about her, the whole long story, you can go to TrueTheVote.org. TrueTheVote.org. It's also up at our website, AmericaCanWeTalk.org. It's a great organization. Catherine, thanks so very much for joining us.
Absolutely, Debbie. Thanks so much.
And that, my friends, is an American hero. No kidding.